Okay, so 1924, and I think we should try to aim to finish this today so we can have Q&A tomorrow. Okay. All right. And apparently this is much more difficult than I thought it was, okay, because of one word. Taman atzel yado batsalachas gam el pihu lo yeshivena. How do you translate that? Taman is hard. So the taman is to like insert.
Oh,
What were you gonna say?
I was thinking of pasuk.
I mean, it's also to hide or conceal.
Okay.
So that's probably Hadman is like covering up, or matmonim are like hidden treasures. Yeah. So yeah.
A lazy person.
Yep.
Lazy.
Yeah.
Conceals his hand with.
Yeah. So did you say something? Oh, isn't sure. Joe said something. Okay, lazy person. Okay, so you want. Okay, we'll leave that. Lazy person, something his hand in the tzalachas. Okay, go ahead.
Also, to his mouth, he does not return.
Yeah, so I'm gonna reverse the order just to make it smoother in English. And he doesn't even return it to his mouth.
Oh, yes, he does not. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So this is where the difficulty starts in the translation. Okay. So, and I think we might actually have to go to the Mefarshim first, but first let's look at Metzudas ציון. So it says Metzudas ציון is B'Tlachat Shem Kli Bishul. So it's a cooking implement or cooking dish. Okay. So that would be translating it as dish. And I don't know if cooking dish is like davka or if it just is a regular dish, because that's kind of what the Mefarshim talk about there. Okay. All right. So then look. So ArtScroll. No, you do not look at the ArtScroll. ArtScroll says the lazy one buries his hand in the dish. He will not even return it to his mouth. Living Knox says a lazy man may bury his hand in the plate, but he will not return it to his mouth. And then Alter says the sluggard hides his hand in the dish. He won't even bring it to his mouth. Okay. So they all go with the dish interpretation. All right. But then look at Rashi. Okay. And I'm going to share the Rashi. In fact, I'm going to share the Rashi on Al Torah because they have an English one, and some of these words are a little weird. So Rashi says, and tell me if there's any significant differences in your Rashi and mine. So Taman Atal Yada B'Salachas B'Yore Chama, in a hot kettle, okay, or hot pot. Avruha min ha'ur, when it's removed from the fire, upinuha, and emptied, rekanis, I guess poured out and emptied, Machamim Yado Basocha, then a person can warm his hand in it. Okay, so I guess this is a thing. So I'm picturing like a giant pot here. Probably kettle's a bad word, but let's say like a giant pot that's been on the stove. So you pour out the water and then you like put your hands in the pot, the empty pot, because it's all warm in there still.
Yeah.
Okay. V'domelo bashlu basirot uva dudim uva tzalacha. So that's the same pasuk that the Mishlei we quoted. They cooked in pots and cauldrons and in kettles. Okay, fine. So that's one interpretation. Okay. So it's putting his hand into the so this is the one that's strongest in terms of like saying that dafka means a cooking implement. Okay, so he's doing it for warmth.
Got it.
Okay.
This made me think of like, well, you know, there's like that experiment with like the monkey, like get the banana from the thing, and he's holding the banana.
Oh yeah.
I don't know why that made me.
That's interesting. All right, maybe that image will come in handy. Okay, then he says, Umishum Rabbi Yitzchak Halevi, who I'm not sure who that is, Shamati, so he heard, but Tlachas Miloshin Targum Vayivaka. So it's from the Aramaic translation of Vayivaka, he split. Vatsalach, which is Vatsalach. Okay, so Vatsalach is Aramaic for the Hebrew Baka. B'char Hatzina, at the time of cold, v'hagalid, and frost, al shem shahakor v'hagalid mevakin v'tzolchim hayadayim, since the cold and the frost crack and split the hands. Okay, okay, fine. So that's number 2, and then I have in brackets for my English. Hence, we render a lazy man hid his hand in winter. Okay, so that's like I'm getting imagery of like I guess it's not saying where he's hiding his hand, but he's just hiding it in the winter. Okay,
Which
and
is similar to the first shot that I
you're warming your hands.
Yeah.
I guess, yeah. And then the third one, Vani Shamati Batzlachas Kera Hachaluk. So I heard that Tzlachas is the tear of a garment, Shikorin Fenditura in Italian. Okay. Belav Klomar Tumna Bechiko, meaning he hides it in his cloak. Okay, or bosom, as they say. Yeah, okay, so that's Bechiko. Okay, so that's one. So we have here, so let's just take stock of what we have here so far. Hold on just a second here. I just gotta share the other screen again. Yeah, good luck doing this in one day. Okay, so he hides his hand in the tzlakas in the dish. That's one. He hides his hand in the winter, and he hides his hand in his cloak. Okay. And then I feel like you can't just use pihu in the same way for all of these things. If it's a dish, oh, right, we can really split it with a dish. Okay, there's dish like eating dish. Then there's pot, warming pot. Let's just call it a warming pot. Okay.
Yeah.
And then there's winter, and then there's cloak. So the eating dish is the one that makes the most sense to me. He puts his hand in the eating dish, and he doesn't even return to his mouth like a banana, right? To eat the food. Okay, if he puts his hand in the warming pot, he doesn't return to his mouth. I don't know what that means.
Meaning there's nothing in the pot for to eat.
Maybe.
Especially because of the gum.
The gom, yeah. Yeah, gom is like a chiddush. Like he doesn't even return to his mouth. Makes a lot of sense if you're talking about the eating dish, because like what this guy like he's not even like eating what he grabbed in the dish, And then winter and cloak, I don't really know. Other possibility, by the way, for pihu, I think some of the Mepharshim say pihu is the mouth of the tzalachas. Okay, which I don't know if that helps us at all, but yeah. And then the other thing also, so I look at the Targum there, I tried to figure this out. And I right beforehand, okay, so it says Atla, so that's I guess a lazy person, Demache Yadeh B'Shachat Se, who puts his hand, Demache Yadeh B'Shachat Se, who puts his hand in his shachat. Now shachat means like a bunch of stuff, right? So I was looking at the shachat stuff. Hello.
Okay.
Oh, you got all of them? Yeah.
You're getting better ideas.
Oh, what if that were true? So shachas, it says here, so the only word for shachas that I feel like makes sense according to all these things, which is a weird one, is where is it? Armpit. Which is weird. So I think that's like a warming thing, like like not literally your armpit, but like you're just kind of like, maybe this is the shachas. I don't really know. So whatever. Yeah. All right. So that's that. And then Sadigon, does he say anything to help us? He says, Timsa, you'll find Sha'ato Kvar Tavo Yado Batalachas, that the lazy person has dipped his hand into the dish, Derech Mashal, by way of allegory, the Katra Lachaloso Lahashiva Alpiv, and he's too deficient to return to his mouth. Yeah. So I don't know which translation we want to go with. I mean, I think the eating dish is the simplest one. So maybe we should like start with that, and if we come up with something else, then we'll or if we have more time, we'll do that.
It's like we need to go over a couple of secrets then.
Yeah. So a lazy person, hold on a second, dips his hand into the dish.
Oh, dips. It also meant dip.
Or dip. Well, I guess I said that because of Saudi going to Taval. But he inserts hides, his hand in the eating dish, and he doesn't even return to his mouth. That's how we're doing it. Yeah. And that's how Art Scroll and Living Knock and Altar did it. So what are the questions?
Wait, just to clarify, how are we translating Taman?
To dip or to place or insert.
Okay.
Bury is another one.
That has to do with pot.
Yes.
Well, maybe this question, is there stuff in the pot?
Yeah. So if we're talking about the eating dish, then there's definitely stuff there, I think. If we're talking about the warming pot,
Right.
then it sounds like there's nothing in there.
Right.
And then the problem with that is then we don't know why he's returning to his mouth or why that's a chiddush or whatever. So let's go with the eating dish first. So picture like a guy with like a bowl of like chips. Okay, and he puts his hand in there and he's like, and he doesn't even return to his mouth.
Yeah. So I guess
pretty funny.
Why is he not?
Yeah, so that's the main question, right? So why does he not? Why doesn't the lazy person return his hand to his mouth? And then especially since he put his hand in, right? Meaning, if he didn't put his hand in at all, so then you could just say he doesn't want to eat or whatever. But the fact that he put his hand into the dish seems to imply that like he wants to eat. So then why is he not like yeah.
What's the even going on? Because
Yeah.
now has there something that's more obviously that he's not doing,
Yeah,
but he's even not putting it.
yeah. So what's the gone?
What do you mean referring to his mouth? Like, it sounds like an his mouth. I refer to his mouth.
Yeah. Okay. So let's say, yeah. Why? See, the reason why I was hesitating is because I think it just means like bring it to his mouth. Yeah. Yeah.
Maybe you can still ask then why is it use the word yeshiva?
Yeah. You can ask that. Yeah. I'm not so bothered by that question.
Why is it come on?
I'm not so bothered by that either. Okay, fine. Why Taman?
What is an upsell?
Yeah. What is an otzel? Oh, I want to show you something also that I know this is already going to the Mefarshim, but I don't think this is giving us an idea. Look at Rabbeinu Yonah. He starts off with something interesting here. Left column 3 down.
This is the
Yes. Talmud Altel Yad B'Tzalach Derech Sefer Hazeh. So the method of this book and the style of this book, Kasher Yazkir Inyan Hayira Yidaber Aha Atzla, is when it talks about fear, like fear of Hashem, then it talks about laziness. V'chin Kasher Yazkir Inyan HaChachma, and also when it mentions Chachma, Lefisha Hayira v'HaChachma Tzrichos Zrizus Ugvura, because fear of Hashem and wisdom require what's our word? Alacrity. Yeah, alacrity and gvura and like might or courage or overpower, self-control. Yeah. So again, that's we won't look at his explanation of the pasuk yet, but so I thought that was interesting also. Just keep in the back of your mind. No, that's yeah.
Yeah, so I have kind of rough idea. Maybe you could say that like
Before you do that, I think we got all the questions. I think we got all the questions, right? Yeah. Yeah. All right. Go ahead.
that like you have a person who like really wants to fear God and like serve God and like do these things, and like he wants to do it to the point of where like he goes and he like sits down in front of a sefer and like he wants to do it.
Mhm.
But his like his I mean, it's not that he doesn't have a desire to do it, it's just that his laziness like overpowers his desire to do it.
Yeah.
He's like sitting right there like wanting to do it, but he's just too lazy and like he can't push himself to like actually go do it.
Okay, so this is the question that we have to. So you're responding to the Rabbeinu Yonah, I assume, right?
Yeah.
So the question is laziness is it highlighting laziness as an obstacle to like acting on your yira and your chachma? That's like seems to be what you're saying.
Yeah.
Or is laziness in its nature the opposite of yira and chachma, and that's why it's juxtaposed with it.
Mhm.
So I think we do need to define laziness, and we have defined laziness. It was earlier in the parak. Do you remember what the pasuk was, or can you just check there? Oh, you're gonna use that?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah.
Last time I was looking through this, you
Yeah.
quite correctly.
Yeah.
You get the mustard.
Yeah. Oh, nice. I suddenly feel called out from this pasuk also now because I feel like there are times when I look in the Jastro to try to figure out the Aramaic translation. I'm like, no, like I get the Jastro. Yeah. That's what I did this time. I didn't even look at the rest of the pasuk. Yeah. If you don't find it, that's fine.
Yeah.
But I remember going over Sadiq's definition of laziness, but do we have another definition? Or should we let's just rethink it? I mean, let's, yeah.
Tesvav.
Tefah?
Yeah. Atla Tapil Tardema.
Right.
The Nevish Ramia Sirav.
Yeah, so the laziness makes you fall into a deep sleep, and the soul of the the lazy person or the deceitful person, that could be translated both ways, will starve. Yeah, I don't remember the idea we came up with there. Yeah, so
Theological.
yeah. Oh, that's right. Yeah, you're right. That's good. Yeah. So
We had a discussion about sleep.
yes, we did. So you want me to repeat Sadigon's definition of laziness?
Is it like your pain?
Yeah, plus. He said that there were two bad midos and everything else stems from those. Do you remember this? Otzilus and Taiva.
Right.
Otzilus is the inability to withstand short-term pain.
Yeah, right. I would, instead of putting it as inability, I would say it's the compulsion to avoid short-term pain and frustration. And then Taiva is the compulsion to obtain immediate gratification.
So it's funny because in this pasuk it seems like he's kind of doing the
Yes, he can't even do that.
right.
Yeah,
He wants to do that, but then he like it's too hard to bring his hand to his mouth.
yeah. So the one question I guess we didn't ask is really, right? I mean, is this really true? Yeah. So let's do one of the Mefarshim. A lot of the Mefarshim say what we're about to see, but I think the Meiri says it the clearest. So let's look at the Meiri, and we're not starting from the beginning of the Meiri, yeah?
Yeah, I just have a thought.
Sure.
About the really question.
Yeah.
I'd say talking about something that's less extreme than this, but it's like highlighting this is the phenomenon because like it's really like you just need to like do a little bit more, you know.
Yeah. Okay, good. So the Meiri is gonna be along with it, yeah.
Yeah, I guess it's kind of in line. Just like an example, like in the bathroom in his dorm, a towel in there.
Yeah.
And like whatever, after like a few weeks, it just needed a washing. Like
Yeah.
you know, I brought it home, I washed it, and then like I brought it back,
Yeah.
and I haven't brought it back.
Yeah.
It's still in my room.
Yeah.
I go to my room and dry my hands, and I
Yeah.
can so easily just bring it down. the
Yeah.
hallway and hang it up with a book, and I just like.
That's a great example, right? So that is almost like you went through all the work to like bring it back home and everything. Yeah, that's a good example of that. Yeah. Okay. So maybe there are examples of this. I feel like this one though people don't do. I feel like if lazy people did this, then they'd all die off, and we wouldn't see any lazy people. You know? Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I guess like it's different when it's like something that's like warm or like is like literally in your hands.
Yeah.
But,
Yeah.
Right, also, sorry, just one other thing. I think possibly why we're using the analogy with eating is like saying that this is not like meaning with third example. It's like it's a good example of like how this can happen in life, but it's not like the end of the world when he doesn't bring
Yeah,
his towel back.
yeah.
He keeps going back to his room and wiping his hands on his towel there and like
Yeah.
whatever. It would be easier if he just brought it up. It's
Yeah.
like it's not the end of the world, right?
Yeah.
Here it's like comparing it to eating because like you're so close to doing like the essence of your existence.
Yeah.
And then like you just can't do
That's
it.
actually a good point,
You
right?
just
So
wanna
that's
wait.
why that might be why he uses eating as an example, because it's a primal need. Yeah. I guess for some people, drying their hands is a primal need, but not, but you're right, it's not gonna end the world. Okay, so look at the Meiri on page Tuf Kuf Mem Gimel. And it's the left column. He goes through other, maybe we'll look at the other Meiri parts in a second. So this is the Meiri. Last word on the line is V'yesh. It's like 6 lines down. Okay, so V'yesh Mefarshim Salachas Ha'ka'ara Sha'ocha B'socha. Okay, so that's the eating dish, the dish that the food is in. The Amar Derech Gudma. You know what Gudma is? From Avram and Ramam? Exaggeration, hyperbole. This is one of the categories. Okay, so he says, it says by way of exaggeration, lahaflig b'mashal, to be extreme in the example. All right. She'af b'dvarim shehana'atzam krova, this is exactly what you're saying. Even in things that have the pleasure is close, utkifa and immediate, hu atolatos, then he is too lazy to do. So that is exactly the point it's highlighting. And again, this is what differentiates, according to Sadigon, between the lazy person and the taiva person, is that when push comes to shove, what's going to win out? Is it the avoidance of immediate pain, or is it going to be the pursuing of immediate pleasure? The type of person will be willing to go through the terrible pain of bringing his hand back to his mouth, but the lazy person won't.
Oh no, it's getting weird now. Now I'm gonna like get back. Like I'm like really hungry.
Yeah.
Out of this.
It's funny because that's another, just a side point, but like this is another benefit of Mishlei in terms of the way he formulates things, is that he creates strong imagery that you will associate when you are next time you're eating from a bag of chips or whatever, you'll think of the pasuk and it just like reinforces everything,
You didn't need to say imagery. Strong association.
Associations, there you go.
I have associations too.
Yeah, tactile associations. Yeah. All right. She'af b'devarim shan. Oh, I just read that. Okay,
Yeah.
but v'amar.
This is like a good example. This is like when someone's like sitting on the couch and like the TV or was like just out of reach.
Yes. Yeah.
It's so far.
Yeah. Exactly. The Amar, and he said, Shikashitaman yado baka'ara lakachas ha'ochel. When he puts his hand into the dish to take the food, lo yishvin l'piv, he won't return to his mouth. Okay, fine. The harishon near yoter. Okay, the first interpretation seems better. All right, we'll read that later. And then he says, okay, so that's one interpretation, but he's going to give another one with the same salachas meaning, I think. The efshar shekavanas einyan lomar. It's possible that the intent in the idea is to say sh'af kishehischil b'malacha hu atzel milaha shlima. That even when he starts a task, I'm going to say task here. I think that's better for malacha. He's too lazy to complete it. And to toil until he arrives at the pleasure from it. So that's like Joe's towel example, right? Like starting the task of washing the towel to restore it, and you washed it, but you just didn't complete it, like putting it back on the towel rack. The Amar derech guzma, and it's also saying by way of hyperbole. Mishihiskil ba'achila, once he starts eating, v'hevi yado lakara, and he puts his hand into the dish lahoti ha'ochel mimena, to take the food from it. Lo yashivena lefiv ligmor inyana. He does not return to his mouth to finish its matter. Maybe that's why it's using yeshivena, that powerful question, meaning that it's saying that it is the process started with extending his hand, and it's returning his hand. Not that it's returning to his mouth, but like extending and returning. Yeah, to himself. Yeah.
So like another example of this, it's a little different because it was tiredness, not laziness.
Yeah.
But when I got back from skiing, I got back like late, it was like 2 a.m.
Yeah.
And I parked outside yeshiva, and I was just so tired. Like I didn't even want to like get up and get out of my car and come inside. Like I wanted to just like sleep right
Yeah.
there. And then whatever, after like 10 minutes just sitting in my car, I like got up and came back inside.
Yeah.
And then when I came inside, I was like too tired to go to sleep. Like I didn't want to go through like the process and like brushing my
That's
teeth,
funny.
going to the bathroom, getting
Yeah.
undressed, and like getting it. Like I just wanted to not go to sleep. But
Yeah.
I needed to go to sleep.
Yeah.
I didn't want to, like,
That's a good example. Yeah, that's pretty close to the eating example in the sense of like you really just need it and you're just too lazy to even do the small intermediary and you're in more pain from not going to sleep, Yeah.
And you started the process.
Right? Yeah, you took the effort of coming in. Yeah. So the question is like, this seems pretty straightforward in terms of an idea, but let's just conceptualize the idea. Sorry, this seems pretty straightforward in terms of a parish, right? Let's just see what idea we get from this though. So and I also kind of want to get the nuance in the two interpretations of the Meiri. First one, he's emphasizing he doesn't even get the immediate pleasure. He lets the desire to avoid immediate pain overrule that. And then the second one is talking about the process, of like eating, and he doesn't complete the process. So let's see if we get an idea for both of those.
Right, it's not that he's just avoiding pain entirely because like he just can't do it. Like he starts the process of that whatever that pain.
Yeah.
And then he's so close. Like he's like almost there to getting the pleasure.
Yeah.
Like he can't even see that.
Yeah.
He can't see that he's so close to getting the pleasure.
Yeah.
And all he sees is more pain. And he's like, I just can't do it. But like
Yeah.
he's already halfway there or more. Like he's already so close. All he has to do is put his hand back.
Yeah.
But like he just can't do it.
Yeah. So I think that I think is why the Meiri is splitting within this one interpretation, is that the question is like, what aspect do we emphasize for the idea? I'm not defining it now. I'm just saying like that's really what he's struggling with is the pasuk highlighting the fact that he's gone so far, or is it highlighting the fact that the immediate pain of returning it to his mouth is winning out over the immediate pleasure of eating it, And I honestly don't know how broad to make this machlokas. Like, in other words, the most extreme thing that we could take is this is two different views of the essence of laziness. The most narrow view we can take is this is just two different ideas, interpretations of the pasuk, and like they're both valid in terms of ideas, but so and then there's like in between. Yeah.
In terms of what's happening in the second one, I think he's doing an action. He managed to overcome the the big hurdle of starting,
Yeah.
the relatively big hurdle. So then he there's like a slight pain in terms of continuing to exert yourself, and he is and like when he is encountering that, like was only able to do it for like starting, but then he can't even sustain himself through that like small.
So this is another, I think, question in the mushal, which is the first half of the process, are we supposed to take that as like pain that he already pushed himself through, which would be similar to the towel example where you went through all the trouble to bring it home and wash it? Or is he getting through the first part of the process because it's not painful? Meaning you got gravity on your side when you put your hand into the dish, but the taking it out is the painful part, you know? And I think those are two different, like we had a pasuk, I don't know who was in, this is early on in the Monday night Mishlei here, that we had a similar thing with the Ben Maskil, Ogre Bakait Ben Maskil, one who harvests in the harvest season is an intelligent son. Ben Mavish Nirdam Bakatsir. The embarrassing son or the shameful son is asleep at harvest time. And one of the questions we asked there is, why would he sleep at the harvest time? Harvest is like the fun part, not the fun part, but it's like then you're bringing in all the stuff. Apparently he didn't sleep during the planting season, which is like a lot of hard work also, you know? So like, you know, yeah, I guess that's my question. In other words, is it saying he went through half of the painful process and he's not completing it, or he went through putting his hand in the dish because it's easy, but then returning the hand to his mouth is the painful part? Yeah.
I guess you could also say that maybe like for the putting the hand in, like the starting, even if there isn't, well, maybe you could say there isn't immediate pain there, but the reason there isn't immediate pain is because when he's starting, he has like this motivation, right? He's looking at the chips and he's like,
Yeah.
I could have chips.
Oh, that's good.
And like he has like a motivation to do it.
Yeah.
And then once his hand is in the bowl, then he's like making an error, right? He's
Yeah.
not realizing that like all he has to do is put his hand back
Yeah.
to get that pleasure that he was motivated to have when he put his hand in.
Yeah.
But because he's making that error and he can't realize that, all he can see is, oh, I have to do work to get
Yeah.
it.
Okay, good. So that's
seeing
right.
I'm
So
so close to pleasure.
that's fitting with the side that says that the putting hand in there is not immediate pain, right? Meaning, so he wants the pleasure, and he's like, okay, I'll just take this immediate pleasure. He initiates the process, and then now he's confronted with the immediate pain, and then the immediate pain wins out.
Right, and he can't see the immediate, like he like loses sight.
Yeah,
of that
exactly.
motivation he had in
That's
the
the
beginning
laziness. Yeah, yeah.
Of the immediate pleasure.
Yeah.
And all he can see is immediate pain, and he doesn't want immediate pain. But like really, it's a second of immediate pain to get, or whatever. It's
Yeah.
a little bit of immediate pain to get more pleasure.
Right.
And he just can't realize that.
Right.
He
So
loses that motivation.
that's a good interpretation. I think this sheds light on the Rabbeinu Yonah now, because Rabbeinu Yonah emphasizes that what do you need in order to do this is, he said you need zrizus and gevura. Like, I don't know exactly what he means by zrizus, because especially if you look back on that page or right above the Meiri there, he says, after he says the thing, Lafisha hayura v'hachafan trichos zrizus v'gevura v'amru zal zrizus mevili de nikius. I don't know if you're getting that from. Zrizus brings you to cleanliness. I don't know exactly what that is. Well, that.
I'm thinking Mathias Sharm.
Yeah, well, that's what the whole book of Mathias Sharm is based on, this memory of Chazal.
Okay.
Yeah, it goes through the whole chain. Yeah, yeah. So good, good vibe reading. Yeah. So, but I was emphasizing that I could see the place of gevura, that you saw something you wanted, you started it, and now you're confronted with this obstacle of the little pain.
You can't push through it.
So the only way to do it is like push through it. And it's interesting because I think the pushing through it is not going to get the lazy person out of his laziness in general. Because let's say it is immediate pain and long-term pleasure. So pushing through it is not going to be able to get you to do all the work for the long-term pleasure. But for the immediate pleasure, he does need to just push through it.
Right.
You know?
And then maybe you could say also, like, if he could just access that strength to push through and get the immediate pleasure, it would like re-spark that motivation in him.
Yeah.
Like, even though again, if he's like a lazy person, it's going to be hard, but that like the same motivation that existed when he first saw the bowl of chips will be like reignited in him when he eats a chip. He's like,
Yes.
chips are good. I can
Yeah.
even though it's hard to
Yeah.
return my hand, like, okay, but I see the pleasure now, and like it kind of corrects that mistake he's making of just seeing the pain.
Yeah, that's really good. Before I call you, just a side point here is that I don't know if you're also getting like little bursts of like comedy at how like we're describing this ordeal of like the guy in the chips, but it is an interesting thing that like in the human psyche, then there are these problems that like for some people, like, you know, we can look at it from an outsider's perspective and say, well, why don't you just like do this one little thing? But that's how the neurotic like psyche works. Is it's almost like a phobia, let's say, right? Is that phobia is when you have an irrational fear of a relatively harmless stimulus, you know, and like you're not really responding to the actual stimulus. You're responding to your own psyche's like magnification of that stimulus, you know, like it's a terrifying thing, you know, and like, so we can look at it from the outside and be like, oh, you're afraid of like a little spider or whatever, you know, but this is what psychological battles are. It's like one little thing, like internally is a huge obstacle. And so like, yeah, maybe like, you know, maybe no one literally eats chips and doesn't like return his hand, but like there are things that are like that in the world, you know. Yeah.
So, two things on. Would you say that a phobia then, according to Rabbi Kate's definition, would be a bizarre? Basically, we defined it yesterday.
Yeah, I mean, it definitely resembles that. Yeah, I guess the only difference would be that phobias, I think, are induced through through traumatic psychological things, as opposed to avodah zarah, which is like uncritically embracing a philosophical or an imagination as a reality. In other words, like it's established through a different route.
Okay.
But yeah, they definitely resemble each other. Yeah.
And secondly, just to give this guy a little more credit.
Yeah.
Like the whole reason he's eating the chips in the first place is to get that pleasure.
Yeah.
Right. And the whole reason he's going to do something pleasurable is if the pain needed to get there is less.
Yeah.
Right. If the pain's going to outweigh the pleasure, it's not worth it. So
Yeah.
he's not going to do it.
Yeah. If someone's feeding him chips, then he's
Right,
going to eat all the chips. Yeah.
Right,
Yeah.
Like he just wants to get a net amount of pleasure over pain.
Yeah.
So if he starts this chip process, then puts his hands in and realizes, you know what, I'm going to get overall more pleasure by not lifting this. The pleasure of like leaving my hand down there is greater than the pleasure of the chip. So he's going to reasonably do that within his own.
So I'm not sure about that, because I think that is the difference between the taiva guy and the atzo guy. It's not that he's going to do the pleasure if it outweighs the pain. It's that he prioritizes avoidance of pain over immediate pleasure.
Even when the pain is less.
Even-
like that's a mistake he's making.
Yeah, right.
Because just pain in his mind is like exasperated as like this horrible experience that he can't do.
Yeah, and I think that's why I'm going to make this statement here, and this is probably something that we should have to explore, but I'll stake my flag here. Is that that's not the phrase? Plant my flag, right? Stake my claim. Okay, yeah. Is I think overall the lazy person is going to be worse off than the taiva person, because at least the taiva person is getting enjoyment, you know. The lazy person is just sitting there not getting chips, you know? So like in terms of I mean, maybe I guess it depends on who you ask, right? Because I guess maybe I'm siding with the type of person and saying, well, you're getting less pleasure if you're lazy. And maybe the lazy person was like, yeah, that's my goal, you know, is
the pleasure.
Yeah, is I don't want to have this pain, and therefore like that's more pleasurable to me, yeah, than the actual pleasure. Yeah.
I actually have two examples.
Okay.
One was last night. So I was like kind of hungry, and I was trying to decide if I wanted to like eat more or like go to sleep.
Yeah.
And I realized I had noodle soups, and I was like, these would be great. The thing that I would have to go downstairs and like heat up water and then bring it back upstairs.
Yeah.
And like I like really wanted it. I was like, this would be like perfect, but like I like didn't want to go through.
Yeah.
It. I ended up not having it.
Yeah.
So that's one example. The other is, so I was selling some magic cards, and like, I think it was like maybe like $200 worth of or something, and like I like set up like the like order for like selling it, and like got it like all ready, and all I had to do was just bring it to the post office.
Yeah.
And like
that is a bit of a chore.
yeah. It's like I knew it would be like 20 minutes altogether.
Yeah.
And like that happened in November. And
Yeah.
I just did it 2 weeks ago.
Oh yeah. So that I think actually is not an example of the pasuk, because that is a long-term pleasure, meaning that getting the money that you sell that you get from the sale, and like even money, like I guess in a certain sense, like it depends on how you're using that money. Then money could be an immediate pleasure. But I feel like your first example is the competition between the two immediate. Yeah.
Yeah, I think also just in terms of your claim that you state.
Yeah.
You could argue that the Taiva guy is either equal to or maybe even worse off than the lazy guy because he's chasing pleasure, but the reality is because he's just chasing presumably physical pleasure.
Yeah.
It's like always this like temporary pleasure, and he's always left unsatisfied and like frustrated that like because whenever anyone's looking for pleasure, they're looking for like ultimate pleasure. That's what they're really looking for. And the mistake that somebody would make is that then they start chasing physical pleasure because they can't realize what like ultimate pleasure would be or go through the work of getting the ultimate pleasure. And then like every time they do it, they're left unsatisfied. And then like, okay, I need to do more. I need to do more. And like you're never gonna be satisfied.
Yeah. So I mean,
you're always in pain.
That's what I meant when I said I'm opening up like a little bit of a can of flag worms or whatever the to really talk about in the grand scheme of things, who is actually better off. I think that's a much bigger discussion. For example, you could also say that the guy who's chasing immediate pleasure is perhaps going, and I don't know if this is true, is perhaps going to expose himself to more consequences because he's more active. Definitely, I think we could say that the guy who is pursuing immediate pleasure is more active than the guy who is avoiding immediate pain. And yes, there are consequences to inactivity, like he has to make a living, he's not going to be able to feed himself. And you could say that those are ultimately going to be worse. But like the guy who's like seizing whatever immediate pleasure he has, you steal, you get a consequence of that. Like you cheat, you get a consequence of that. You're doing all these things that are just like piling up long-term consequences. So yeah, I think that it's a good question. It's a good longer question about who's better off and who's worse off. Yeah, Joe.
Bring Isaac's soup example.
Yeah.
It's called eating sleep for dinner.
I've never heard that. That's a great expression. Is that actually an expression?
I think so.
That's funny. Yeah.
Yeah. So this lazy guy, is he like? I guess is he like avoiding the pain? Is he like prioritizing avoidance of pain because he experiences it as worse than like the other guy, or is he just misjudging how bad it's actually?
Okay, so this is another question. Okay, which is, what is the difference between the Taiva guy and the Atzel guy? Is there some, like, for lack of a better term, is there some underlying like philosophy or value system or cognitive component, or is it just like what wins out? In other words, like the way you're asking the question is you're raising the possibility that maybe he's misevaluating, and in which case the Taiva guy would not be misevaluating in that same sense. Yeah. Meaning, because I think when with the chip example, I think we would look at that and say, yeah, the Taiva guy's got it more right, So, but the question is like how does that extend to these personalities as a whole? Like maybe you'll find a parallel example within the Taiva guy that he's distorted and the lazy guy has got it right.
Yeah. So I guess it's either way. Well, is it that they're experiencing these like pleasures or pains more intensely, or is it just? Yeah,
I don't know. That's a good question. That's like a human nature question, I think.
Right, okay.
I mean, not that. I mean, we should think about it. But that's a broader question.
Right. I guess my question is like, is it that you if you are an Atzel, should you is it the right decision to make?
Right. So I'm pretty sure the answer to that is no, and the reason why. So yeah, see, maybe I am answering as just from the perspective of Taiva, but like it seems like this will kill you, right? Taiva will also kill you, but in a longer term thing. Like let's take the thing of like clearly if you don't eat, then you're gonna die. But like again, the Atzel is one of the big critiques of the Atzel that is throughout Mishlei is he doesn't work and he doesn't earn a living, and therefore he won't be able to sustain himself. Like I feel like Atzel is going to lead you on a more direct route to destruction in terms of not satisfying your needs. Right. So in that sense, Atzel is a greater distortion because like what is this guy thinking? Like I can somehow I'm just gonna get sustained. Like there's gonna be like IVs, like putting like my nutrients into me somehow, but again, maybe there's an equal distortion on the part of the Taiva guy, Yeah, it's a good question. Like, I guess what I'm saying is like your critique of the Taiva guy is a much higher level problem of he thinks that this immediate pleasure is going to bring him ultimate happiness, or he thinks that this is going to like, satisfy him forever. Or, that's like a higher level type of mistake. Whereas the belief that I could just sit here and somehow my needs will get taken care of is like a very, very primary mistake. I'm using descriptive language because I'm not exactly sure how to go about framing it. Yeah.
It's also a constant mistake, meaning like the person who's chasing Taiva, like it's a larger thing, but it's constant. Meaning until he stops chasing Taiva, he will always be in that state of trying to get somewhere that's impossible to get to.
Yeah.
And also I think you could say that like in terms of the distortion, like the guy who's chasing Taiva could definitely like make an error and feel like, oh, like misjudge what his needs are. Like obviously we need to eat, we need to sleep, whatever. But he might think, no, like Taiva comes before sleeping. I got to go do all these things,
right?
Like, because that'll definitely be more satisfying than sleep. And, like that's just a misjudgment. Right? It's not true.
Yeah, I mean, an example of that error that also kills you in a different way is again, it kills you slower, but people who make eating decisions based on the pleasure of eating instead of like the nutritional value, like there you are eating and you will survive, but like you're shortening your life, but it's like that's like a long-term consequence for most cases. Yeah. So I mean, this is an interesting thing, just how much how broad. I don't think it's because of Sadiq own definition. Well, okay, this is clearly a very broad topic. This feels much more broad than the last psukim that we've been doing. I think because it gets down to the fundamental of like, what is your modus operandi in terms of all your actions, Yeah.
Right. And also what I just said for the Taiva guy, I think you could also apply it to the lazy guy in terms of, I don't know if this is exactly what you're saying, Dev, but like for the lazy guy, is it that it's like a calculation or is it just like a misjudgment?
Yeah.
And I would argue that like, regardless of what it is, it's like the same concept carries over that like because there's that distortion, because it's coming from a place of laziness, which is not like logical thinking. Even if he has a calculation, the calculation is most probably, not a good calculation. I mean, like, let's say the calculation is, the pain will be worse than the pleasure. Like, he could just be misjudging that. Like,
what's the difference then between the two? I thought you were saying, I misunderstood the first thing. What was your dichotomy?
Between a misjudgment and it actually feels worse.
Yeah.
So I'm saying like the calculation could be a misjudgment. So there isn't really a difference. Meaning like.
Yeah, I'm starting to lose the distinction also.
I'm saying like you could either misjudge or you could make a misjudged calculation. But regardless, he's not thinking logically about this.
I mean, maybe this is what you're asking. Is it a misjudgment in terms of the particular, or is it just like the way he evaluates these types of things in general?
I was thinking more. I guess I was saying like, is he just like imagining that it's going to be worse? Like when he actually goes through the pain, it's not as bad as expected, or is it like actually going through the pain will actually feel worse to him?
I see what you're saying. So there's a pasuk that doesn't answer, but there's a pasuk in Mishlei that describes. It says the path of the lazy person is fenced with thorns, and there's different ways to interpret it. But the way we interpret it is like, imagine like a thin wall of thorns that's obstructing your path. So if you try to just walk, it's gonna hurt. But if you just plow through it, then you can get by, And like that would suggest, again, I'm not answering based on this pasuk, but based on that pasuk, it sounds like it really is not as bad as he thinks it's gonna be. He just builds it up as, well, there are thorns here, and look, it hurts, But like if you just push through it, then you can get by. I think it's a bigger question though. I think we've got to think about it. Okay.
Another question. You could have, and I'm assuming like I don't know this, but could you have like uplift in one area?
Yes. I would definitely think you can. Yeah.
I'm not exactly sure what the flip side of this pasuk is.
So that's what I'm trying to get at with Meiri, is if you say, we've been taking like his first path of that the pasuk is about the fact that the avoidance of immediate pain will win out over the immediate pleasure. I think I see an idea for the second thing, which is that the lazy person, why is laziness the opposite of chachma? Because the lazy person, the reality of processes is not real to him. I think that's the idea, meaning that we view this as a process of you put your hand in the dish, you get the chip and you eat it, but when he does it part way, he just can't, like you were saying earlier, like he can't see or like you were saying, he can't see the pleasure of that last outcome, So to us, it's obvious that this is all one process. Eating involves putting hands in and taking hands to the mouth, and it's saying that it blocks him from seeing the reality of the process. And he just views this it's almost like he's viewing this thing as an end in its own right. Like, what do you want me to do? Just like bring my hand back? That's just pain. You just want me to involve myself in pain, And that's the emphasis on the halfway process, Yeah.
I do very much like that hyperbole.
Yes, it's a very, very effective thing. Yeah, and you can sometimes even use it to motivate yourself. Like I don't want to be like that chip guy, Yeah.
I think to me it seems like I'd say like the point of the pasuk is to emphasize like how when you're like not doing that last bit, like saying you're like this guy, like you have your hand in the pot and all you need to do is just bring it back to your mouth.
Yeah.
And like and it's like I don't know. It seems like the I don't want to hear the thing that you were saying.
Okay, so let's think about it some more. I don't want to keep you from your morning seder.
Okay.
Yeah. All right, we'll stop it. So tomorrow Q&A.